We're back, everyone. Welcome to Subjectively, the home of SMAUGUST 2022 Just Desserts. My name is Jack, and my sincerest apologies for the lateness of this video. As is often the case with these challenges, I found myself traveling right smack in the middle of the month. Visiting family is always fun, but it did set me back a tad in terms of video production. I'm proud to say, however, that I managed to stay up to date with my drawings. That's a big part of what these challenges are all about. Developing good work habits to help you as an artist adapt to situations like travel plans or any other obstacle that life might throw your way. Alright, with all that said, I think it's time we take a look at Week 2's dragons. If you're just joining us for this video, I strongly encourage you to go watch Week 1. You might be a little confused without it. Everyone else, sit back and enjoy 6 new dessert-themed dragons and the newest Maza region Fagemon design. This week starts with the prompt Mochi. Mochi, for any of you unfamiliar, are a type of Japanese dessert made from sticky rice and are sometimes stuffed with a delicious filling. The first kind of mochi I ever tried was frozen and filled with ice cream. It's not common to serve mochi this way, but I still associate the treat with that particular experience. I had my dragon breathing chilled, frigid air out of its mouth. To pay homage to the region of origin, I designed my Mochi Dragon in the style of typical Japanese dragons, with a long, serpentine body and more mammalian features in the face. That piercing stare that's so common in Eastern depictions of dragons made this dragon look a little more fierce than my previous ones, but I really liked it. I actually used Procreate's symmetry tool to sketch it so that the uncanny gaze was as perfect as possible. I made a little mane out of sakura leaves, referencing one of the oldest methods of preparing mochi. I also gave the dragon little wooden horns that are more like the sticks that you would eat dango off of than anything related to mochi, but I still thought it looked cute. When painting this, I wanted to be sure to capture the texture of the mochi. Mochi are soft enough that picking them up will leave an indent in the dough, so I tried to recreate that subtle texture with very delicate brushes like the gouache brush and the rusted decay texture brush. I also used some of the airbrushing brushes to create icy particles in the breath. Churros are one of those desserts for me where just having one can sometimes be enough. Fried dough is a very different story from baked dough, both in how it makes my stomach feel and in how you render it. When I sketched out my Churro Dragon, I wanted to be sure to have plenty of features that could showcase the iconic, long-bodied shape of a churro, so I gave it a long neck, sweeping tail, and curled horns so that I had plenty of room for those textures. The trick for replicating the look of a churro was in capturing the ridges of the pastry. When fried, the dough becomes darkest at its thinnest points. It was contrary to my instincts as an artist, but the more raised a surface on the dragon's body was, the darker I needed to make it. In all honesty, I don't think I really made them dark enough. I'm learning that I don't employ enough contrast in my textures or designs in general, so that's something I'm going to work on moving forward. The final touch for this piece was adding the chocolate dip. This actually did add some nice contrast into the piece, and it was fun capturing the subtle hues in glistening liquid chocolate. I used my favorite brush, the round brush, to paint in these textures. As always, a good reference was key in recreating all of those minute highlights and reflections. Sweet roll was a bit of a repetitive prompt, as it's kind of a general term that can describe a lot of different desserts. The reason I included it, however, was to do more with dragons than it did desserts. Skyrim is one of my all-time favorite games, and it played a formative role in my artwork. The dragons in Skyrim were particularly influential to me. I loved how fantastical they looked while still taking into consideration things like anatomy, characterization, and visual drama. They really felt so alive, even on Xbox 360's graphics, and I studied their faces a lot when I was in high school drawing dragons in my notebooks. Anyway, I wanted this dragon to be a callback to my Skyrim days, following the basic body plan of those dragons while incorporating some of the variously shaped sweet rolls out there. Technique-wise, there wasn't much different about this dragon than the bear claw. In fact, it was at this point that I realized I had far too many baked goods on my prompt list. My dragons were starting to feel a little samey. I decided that going forward, I wanted to switch things up a bit. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. Does Day 9's prompt say ring cake or king cake? The font does make that K look a lot like an R, but to be fair, there is a capital R directly above this prompt. Anyway, Day 9 is a king cake, which is a relatively obscure pastry from a very specific part of the world. King cakes are made to celebrate Mardi Gras in New Orleans, Louisiana. Ironically, they're usually baked in a ring-shaped form, so I guess ring cake isn't totally off. They also sometimes have little plastic babies inside them. Yeah, I know, it's it's a strange prompt. Because Mardi Gras is one of the most boisterous celebrations I'm aware of, I wanted this dragon to be full of festive energy. With horns that mimic the shape of a jester's hat and with its arms wrapped around its favorite baby doll, this fun-loving dragon is ready to party until the sun comes up, and then goes down again. And then maybe a bit more. I used a few different airbrush tools and even the Glimmer Luminance brush to capture that fine, glitter sprinkle texture that coats the frosting on a king cake. As much as I liked this sketch, I felt like my final render for this dragon was somewhat lacking. I was having fun experimenting with new brushes and techniques, but a part of me missed my old style of rendering. This is a very special dragon for me. August 10th is my birthday. Like with last year, I wanted to pick a prompt that was particularly indulgent for me. I won't say it's my favorite dessert, because some of you may argue that it's not a dessert at all. Either way, frosty pina colada is probably one of the best things in the world, in my opinion. As a kid, I would get them without alcohol, poolside at this hotel my parents would take us to every summer up in Maine. It's one of those drinks that just feels like summer, so I wanted to reflect that in the design of the dragon. A serpentine, aquatic body and a shark-like head felt like summer to me. This dragon was also more of its own creature with dessert-like features, rather than a dessert in dragon form. I think I like the way those kinds of dragons look better, and I decided that this was the direction I'd take going forward. That said, I was still a little unhappy with the rendering style. I learned that I prefer a little more contrast and more clean edges and lines in my designs. It was a fun exercise, but after this week I decided that I would go back to a rendering style more like the one I used during Kaijun or Mermaid. The last dragon I made this week would be the last I did in this rough, sketchy style. For a banana split, I was tempted to do a multi-headed dragon. I still like the idea, but I was afraid it might look a little too much like the corn dragon I made last year. Instead, I used a little visual mimicry and shaped the wings of this dragon like two bananas. Now, open book honesty time. This dragon was done in the car at around 10 p.m. I was pretty tired, and it was tough drawing along a bumpy road. This is part of the challenge of things like SMAUGUST. Ideally, you're always at your desk with some nice music playing, your reference pictures right next to you, and your head clear. But it's hard to control the circumstances of every single day of the month. So you gotta adapt, and sometimes your work may suffer a bit because of it. I think these factors, combined with my experimental new techniques, made this dragon one of the weakest of the month so far. but maybe that's just me. Artists tend to be their own harshest critics. Well, unless you upload your art to YouTube, then YouTube commenters are your harshest critics. While I might not have loved the last dragon I made this week, I can tell you with confidence that the dragons I've started making for week 3 are already much better. And that video will come even sooner than usual, seeing as this video is so late. Anyway, the final design for week 2 is another Pokemon, an evolution for Kanagan. Let's have a look. First off, a brief refresher from last week. Kanagan is the first of a 3-stage evolutionary line of rock types. Themed around obsidian weapons, it sports a chiseled stone knife on its head. The evolution of Kanagan is Kahachet, who, like its first form, is a pure rock type. Designing rock types can be tricky. Like with fire types, the easiest way to convey their typing is by including explicit visual identifiers in their designs. Normally I'd avoid this convention, but it actually kind of made sense to me in this line. I wanted it to be something like Geodude or the Roggenrola line, where the progression throughout the evolution is kind of just rock into bigger rock into rock monster. The concept of stone weapons being integrated into the monster's designs also evolved, and we went from stone knife to stone axe. These designs are a little out of my comfort zone, but I'm happy with both Kahachet and Kanagan. I kept that same naming convention because it felt weird to have an apostrophe in one form's name but not the other. You guys let me know if the name sounds weird. Kahachet, the axe head Pokemon. The stone of Kahachet's head is volcanic and incredibly sharp. Kahachet will compete over territory by swinging their heads at one another. The sounds of these battles echo throughout the labyrinthine caves that they call home. Kahachet sustain themselves on the lichen that grows on rocks deep within caves, though at one point scientists believe that they actually ate the rocks. This is because Kahachet will consume entire chunks of mineral whole, dissolve the stone in their acidic stomachs, and metabolize only the lichen that grows on the rock. The byproduct of this digestive process leaves behind large mounds of strangely shaped stones all throughout their caves. Next week, or rather in a few days, we'll see the final evolution for Kanagan's line. What do you guys think of the Mon so far? Like? Don't like? Let me know down in the comments. We're gonna end today's video with some of my favorite illustrations of SMAUGUST dragons that you guys have done in the past few weeks. If you want to have your work featured in an upcoming video, share it in the Discord in our SMAUGUST channel, or tag it on Instagram with the tag #SMAUGUSTJustDesserts. I'm not lying when I say that some of these pieces have actually been inspiring me to work harder, and going forward I'm actually going to take a few pointers from some of the artists whose work I'm showing now. Thank you all so much for watching, everyone. A special thank you to our Patreon supporters. You guys keep our channel alive and thriving, and we love you all very much. Enjoy the 3rd week of SMAUGUST, everyone, and we'll see you all in the next video.